I'm Mia D. Martin, and I'm excited to bring to you Season 7. Opening up our Season 7, we have a spectacular guest, and his name is Ray Abram. Thank you very much for joining us today, Ray.
Well, thank you for having me, Mia.
Awesome. So I've known Ray for several years. I'm excited for you to be here because if it's one thing we all need as entrepreneurs and corporate professionals, it's to know how to network.
Very, very true.
And you're going to teach us all about networking today and come back and share even more best practices with us because your network is your.
Net worth.
All right, well, let's go ahead and dive right in, Ray. When you think about the clientele that you've worked with and the experiences that you've provided to them as it relates to developing their networking strategy, how do you first get started with helping someone overcome their fear of networking?
Right. Well, I first of all, I kind of assess where they are because many people are not afraid of networking. They just don't know how to do it properly. And sometimes when they don't do it properly, then they don't get the results they're looking for, and they feel that networking just doesn't work. So it doesn't make any sense for them to go out and do that work. But what I tell them is that you have to have a strategy, you have to have a plan in place to make your networking effective and efficient. So many people get caught up in going to networking event. They hand out a whole box of business cards and they don't get any results. And so they think it's something wrong with networking. But it's not networking, it's the way you're doing it. It's about building relationships instead of transactions.
So, where do you think people go wrong in person events? What do you think are some of the things that they may be missing out on when they enter that room of maybe 50 to 100 people?
Well, there's a couple of things that people do wrong. First of all, you have a lot of people who, are shy and they come into a networking event and they head right to the food and right to the bar and then right to the wall to stand there and eat and drink and hope maybe somebody will come and talk to them. What I tell people is that the middle part of networking is the word work.
Hmm.
You're there to work, and so you're not there just to be entertained by the DJ, right? People as you can, and so that you can kind of put them into your funnel. And I know you have some marketing experience, so
A little
so
bit.
you understand the funnel concept you have a lot of people kind of come into your view, your purview. But then you qualify them to see if they should be part of your network. So if you think about a funnel like you have in your kitchen, and all these people are going into the funnel, everybody you meet goes into the funnel. But then the networking actually happens when you follow up with them, when you build a relationship, when you have conversations with them over days, weeks, or months. And as you're building this relationship with them, you're moving them further down the funnel until you've decided that this person is worthy to be in my network.
Absolutely, because it's not about quantity, it's about quality, right?
Yes.
And when someone is attending these networking events, and let's say they've gone home with several different men that they do immediately following that event.
Right. Well, you should make sure you put all of those folks into some type of system. Business cards, the paper themselves, are not a very good way to keep track. Most of us, and I bet many of you at home, have an entire shoebox or an envelope or a drawer filled of business cards that you've collected over the years that you've never called these people. Right. And so that's why it's so important to have a system in place. And you never know where a good lead is going to come from. Many times you meet people at a networking event, you get this business card and you say, well, this person can't buy from me. This person won't do business with me. So you never bother calling them. But by reaching out, having a system in place to just touch base with all of them and have a follow-up conversation, let them know what you do and what's a good customer for you. And then if they come to find out they are good for your network, they will either be able to buy from you at some point in the future or be able to recommend or refer someone who could be a good client for you.
So let's talk about for those who may not network very frequently or maybe apprehensive about it. When you're going home, I know for me, the first thing I do, in addition to placing them in my CRM, is I actually connect with them on LinkedIn. And most of the time I do it on the spot. So that way they can put a face with a name. We can see one another's backgrounds. And then I'll send a follow up text or email within the week so that I'm staying top of mind with them, right? But I think one of the more difficult parts is developing kind of like that first engagement. So is it coffee? Is it a Zoom call? Is it lunch? How would you advise people on how to approach setting up that first connection point?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. That is always kind of a sticky point, but it is so important. And I'm a fan of coffee. Coffee is inexpensive. It's, there's no expectations. Usually it can be quick. It can be 15 minutes. It can be 30 minutes. At just meet up at the Starbucks. And, one of the tips I give folks is to actually have a place that's your spot, right? That's your cheers. And then this way you can be there for 3 or 4 hours and you can have several people come through one at a time. Right. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, with having what I call office hours at a bar or at a restaurant or at a coffee shop. Corner, you're comfortable. And it also gives you something called social proof, right? So what happens is when someone who's your guest comes into your Starbucks or your restaurant, everybody there knows your name, to quote an old TV show.
Yeah.
Everybody knows your name, and it actually kind of gives people this vibe that you're a friendly guy, that you're well known, you're liked, you're trusted, and then that kind of rubs off on them. So people to meet you there over the course of a few hours.
And I really just want to piggyback off of that and integrate it into how important it is as it relates to financial freedom because there's a budget behind all of this networking. And I do agree with the coffee concept because the lunches, the dinners, the events, they can all add up. And if you're just getting started as an entrepreneur or you're making that leap from corporate into maybe a side gig of entrepreneurship, all of that stuff can add up fast. So I know for me, the Club Core Properties, Buckhead Club and the Commerce Club here in Atlanta, and to your point, I love the social proof concept because when people would come there, it was my cheers, it still is, especially Commerce Club. But when people would come in, everyone around me, because I built those relationships over the years, would speak and everyone would kind of network and get to know one another. So not only was it valuable for myself, but it was valuable for my clients for me to be able to introduce them to other entrepreneurs. So not that this is a Club Core commercial by any means, but in order to streamline my costs, manage my time effectively as an entrepreneur to maintain financial freedom and not get over inundated with bills as it relates to entertaining clients, that was a great way for me to streamline the process myself.
Yes.
So let's dive in a little bit deeper as it relates to quality of network and having purpose when you go to networking events because I know as a consultant myself in the marketing space, when I've sat down with people and asked who's your target client, there's usually some pretty common answers. And sometimes it's, well, anyone. And not everyone is your client, right? And that also translates over into your time. So if you're going to go to a networking event, you want it to be somewhere where you can actually find your client or where that person can introduce you to your client. Let's dive deeper about positioning yourself to be around quality leads and clients.
Absolutely. And it's interesting, as I've gone, done research around networking, I've discovered it's very much like marketing, right? When you think about it, when you're networking, you are marketing yourself. So a lot of the terms and terminology actually crosses over. So one of the things I do with my clients, one of the first things we do is after we identify the types of clients that would be good for you, the type of people you want to have in your network, we actually draw personas for each one, right? Just like you would do in a marketing campaign. What does this person look like? What's their family structure? How much do they make? And really, because what it does, it forces you to think about and be proactive about the people who are in your network. When you think about the people who are currently in your network, many of them probably are just random people you met along, picked them up, you met them at church or you met them, at a bar, and they're just in your life today. but they may not be good customers. They may not be good referral sources for you. And so by being proactive and deciding on the type of people that you want to meet, and even honing into specifics, and sometimes I even have names of specific people that I want to meet, because the way that the universe works is when you start to think about stuff, when you focus on stuff, those people will show up in your life. I've had clients who've gone through this exercise with me, and within days, they've met the people that they wanted to meet, and they just showed up. And so, and because you're proactive, you've done this work, you know to move that relationship forward immediately.
Yeah, and I think you have to meet God halfway, right?
You have
So
to.
I think if you chart it out and you have your goals there and you're making an effort, I know that the Lord can bless you to move forward with it, but you've got to put in your diligence and your work, right?
Yes.
So when we think about diving in a little bit deeper, even more to that quality of network, right? Let's say that you're going golfing,
Yes.
you're going to meet friends for brunch, you're going to church,
Yes.
you're going to a variety of different activities, maybe a concert, you're planning a mini staycation with a few friends in town, whatever it may be. When you think about the time that you spend with your family and friends, how do you incorporate business friends or network into that existing group?
Right. It's so important that you do, is that you find events. And that's something that I recommend is actually you can create events for your business folks. So you don't have to overthink it. Once a month we go to Top Golf, and what I do is I'm going to be there. And I let all of my business friends know I'm going to be at this certain place at a certain time. And then people come. And it builds that relationship. Sometimes we assume that people are too busy or people already have too much stuff in their lives. But you'd be surprised, many people don't. Many people are quite lonely, and they wish somebody would invite them to something. And so by creating this experience, creating this event, and again, you don't have to pick up the bill. You're just saying, I'm going to be at Top Golf, or I'm going to be at this place, or I'm going to be at that place on a certain day at a certain time. Come join me. And a few people will. And what will happen during this time is you'll build those relationships around a social setting as opposed to trying to sell. But as the goal of, again, this funnel, right, is you're building relationships so that at some point in the future, the people in your network wouldn't dream of buying from someone else. If they had a need for something, a product or service that you sell, they wouldn't dream of buying it from anyone else except for you. Or if someone asked them for a referral, they wouldn't dream about sending anybody except for you.
So let's talk about people that are in those types of industries. So I know that I've shared with you all, not only do I own Modern Creative, but I'm also a broker for GAMSG, which is an insurance brokerage. And when we think about insurance professionals, realtors, financial advisors, anyone that really has to maintain a clientele base to continue to build their business on a daily, weekly, annual basis, they have to network. And
Yes.
it has to be a quality network. It has to be a trusted network because these types of services are primarily centered around financial freedom, right? So the investment of your finances into a home, investing in insurance to protect your future, your family, the things that you own, your assets, right? Your assets as well from a financial advisor perspective. So these people aren't just going to click a Calendly link and book an appointment with you if they don't know you in most
Right.
cases, right? They're not going to just respond to your first LinkedIn outreach message or maybe your email marketing campaign because this is money that we're talking about. They're hard earned money. And I think when you're in professions like that as entrepreneurs, it's a very unique dynamic that you have to learn to network. So, what advice would you give to people who work in industries where they really have to be trusted with something that is of substantial value in someone's future? How should they approach networking?
Yeah. Networking is networking. Again, it's about having a strategy, identifying who you want to have in your network, but building trust. I think that's really interesting. And I think sometimes we conflate trust with integrity, right? If I give you money, I believe you're going to bring it back to me. However, there's also another piece of trust. It's called competence, right? I believe you'll bring my car back to me, but I don't know if you'll bring it back in one piece, right? So part of the trust building process is not only showing integrity, and quite often that's a given if you're a fiduciary, right? They know there are laws and systems in place to make sure that you act with integrity. However, that competence piece is where you have to show and that you know what you're talking about, that you are this thing. And so quite often folks in those industries you just mentioned, if they're doing it part-time, they don't spend that time learning their craft, learning the business, learning the laws. And so you have to do that in order for someone to trust that you'll take care of them, and not because you're careless, but because you may not have the skills to do. And so part of building that relationship is not just about having fun, it's about showing that you know your stuff.
So you have to know what you're talking about,
Have to
right?
know-
You
you
have
have
to
to know what you're
perfect
talking
your
about.
craft. And let's talk a little bit about the trustworthy factor.
Yeah.
So, of course, being knowledgeable is one component, but what about the professionalism aspect of it? So, just the overall branding. So, looking professional, speaking in a professional manner, being on time. Like, what are just some other variables that can impact someone's ability and their perception to perceive you as being trustworthy or not?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Personal branding is key, right? Because your network is all about you and what people think about you. And so there are blind spots that we have and things we believe that people think about us, but that may not be correct. And so we would think, well, of course you trust me. I'm obviously a good person. I'm obviously professional. But people may think that about you. So it's important that you find out. So I have a tool that I use with my clients called the Johari window. It's a psychology test that allows you to pick from a list of 56 words that you think describe you in like professional, punctual, kind, warm, caring, 56 words, and you pick 5 words that you think describe. Then you give that test to 3 of your friends and see what words they pick, right? And quite often the words are very different. But by doing the gap analysis of the words you pick and the words that they pick, now you can see, well, I think I'm funny.
Right?
Nobody picked funny, right? And so it gives you that insight into how other people see you. And so I think figuring out that blind spot is really critical in your personal branding attempts.
I love the journey with the people. I love to not only listen to God and through me to the congregation, but to also have a reciprocal stream where I am hearing the voice of God as it comes through the congregation back to me. So I love that exchange as we come together in the moment of worship to listen to the voice of the Spirit.
Feel the beat of nature at a park or forest near you. Find a forest and music inspired by nature at discovertheforest.org.
Leave the audience with a little bit of advice, Freedom, in their lives. What advice would you leave them with?
If you have debt greater than you have savings, then you're eating on borrowed money.
So self-awareness, right?
Self-awareness
Definitely
is
a
key.
key component, because if you're not aware that you're doing something that doesn't work in your favor and you continue to go to more and more events, that's going to shape the narrative of your brand. So it's
Yes.
important to get a hold of that early and kind of figure out where the gaps are, right? No one's perfect, nothing's right or wrong, but really just the best way to connect with your target audience, right?
Absolutely right.
So you talked about really during this time the importance of looking at not just walking in the room and kind of standing in the back, right, or enjoying the food, but let's really dive in a little bit deeper to something that people don't want to touch on a lot of times.
Sure.
And that's the introvert. So I myself am an ambivert. Believe it or not, everyone thinks I'm extremely outgoing. I am not. When the lights come on or I'm in a room and I have to turn on, I do, but I'm actually extremely introverted in my personal time.
Sure.
And so for me, a lot of people don't realize when I'm doing professional speaking or I'm in a situation where I'm speaking to a lot of people, I'm more nervous than anyone that's there. And it's just shocking, right? So for the person who just is completely terrified about going to these events, what advice do you have for them?
Sure. So it's a couple of things. One is get there early. You should get to the event as early as possible before the event even starts is what I recommend to particularly introverted folks, because two things. It kind of gives you an opportunity to warm up. It also gives you the opportunity to build some social proof with the other early arrivers, right? As well as you may get a chance to meet the host. Introverts are actually pretty good one-on-one. It's the crowd that when it's up with hundreds of people around, then you get overwhelmed, right? So coming early allows you to build relationships early, get this social proof, get warmed up, right? And then leave early. Don't overstay. Just being introverted is your energy starts to deplete as the night goes on, right? So you got to kind of, get in there, meet people. And one of the strategies I tell clients, particularly introverted clients, is to use what I call the 5:30 rule.
What's that?
All right. For the 5:30 rule says you talk to the first person you see when you walk in the door within 5 seconds, right? But you only talk to them for about 30 seconds because you can get a vibe from a person. You can get their business card within 30 seconds. And then you can work the room. And then as soon as that 30 seconds is up, you go 5, 4, 3, 2. Hi, my name is. You talk on to the next person. Because as an introvert, your biggest challenge is kind of getting out of your head. Introverts live in their head. And so you start to overthink it and say, oh, well, she looks kind of angry, or he looks like he had a bad day, or God, what is he wearing, And so you end up all night not talking to anybody because you're already assuming that they're not going to be a good fit or a good person to talk to. But by getting out of your head and just using the countdown method, the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you walk right in and say hello. Don't think about it, right? And that system allows you to talk to, before you know it, you've talked to 15, 20 people. Now, if you find somebody who is specifically a good target for you, a good contact for you, who fits the persona, you can go back and talk to them again and have a longer conversation. And with my clients, I walk through how to kind of engage and disengage seamlessly.
I love the journey with the people. I love to not only listen to God's voice as it speaks to me and through me to the congregation, but to also have a reciprocal stream where I am hearing the voice of God as it comes through the congregation back to me. So I love that exchange as we come together in the moment of worship to listen to the voice of the Spirit.
Feel the beat of nature at a park or forest near you. Find a forest and music inspired by nature at discovertheforest.org.
leave the audience with a little bit of advice as it relates to financial freedom in their lives, what advice would you leave them with?
If you have debt greater than you have savings, then you're eating on borrowed money.
Even the introvert or the extrovert, whoever is successful enough to start creating this network. So they're going to events, they're attending online events and networking in the breakout groups of those, and they're really starting to gain some momentum. What advice do you have for them as it relates to monetizing that? So how do you turn that network into opportunities?
Yes, turning business cards into checks is
Yes,
what I
yes.
is what I call it. So again, it's really just about making these people good friends, right? Good customers, good friends. There's no magic sauce. I wish there was. But if you have enough people in your life who wouldn't consider buying from anybody else, right, and wouldn't consider sending anybody to anybody else, you'll have that phone will constantly be ringing, right? When that person is ready. This is something I always tell folks in sales is there's something called a 3% rule. And what that means is that in any market, there's only 3% of the people who are ready to buy your product or service at any given time. And 2 of them already have somebody they're dealing with. So you only have that 1%. So when you're going to a networking event, one of the reasons why people don't find success is because of that. Most people are not in the market to buy today. But by building relationships with the rest of the folks, at some point, they all will. Like, for instance, with insurance. Everybody needs insurance at some point, right? Everybody needs a house. Everybody needs a car. Everybody needs these things. They may not need it today. But if you identify your target client, your person you want to have in your network, and build a relationship so that when they do come around, they will definitely call you.
And I also think that kind of birds of a feather flock together. So if you're surrounding yourself with like-minded and successful individuals, not to say that you can't have diversity amongst your friends, but just specifically as it relates to building your clientele base and that type of networking and establishing friendships within that, I know I found over time that the social proof plays a huge role. That
Yes.
referral plays a huge role in it. So I've had people say, well, if they recommended you, then you're good. And that's the
Yes.
best type of client to get because you've been referred by someone they know, like, and trust, right? So how can people get better at that as far as getting their existing business network to refer them?
I use an acronym called the FROG, and so it's about getting to know a person's family, their recreation, what they like to do for fun, their occupation, and their goals. Right? When you know those things, the framework for conversations as you're building relationships with people. So it's about, you only need about 100, 150 people in your network. You don't need thousands of people. And I think that's a common misconception. You have a few good people, but you have deep relationships with them. And I wanted to talk a little bit about, and we're talking about your network is your net worth. There's actually, networking, there's a thought of capital, right? There's actually a measurement, there's actually formulas around it. But there's 2 different types of capital. You have social capital and relational capital, right? And so many people think about networking, they think about the social capital. That's the number of people that you know. But it's the relational capital where that multiplies. That's how well you know them, right? So extroverts quite often know a lot more people, and introverts feel that they are going to be shortchanged. But introverts are better on the back end. They have better relationships with a few people that they know, so it all balances out. And actually, introverts make better networkers than extroverts, right? Because extroverts tend to know a lot of people, but don't know them very well, or not well enough for them to buy from them at that time when the person needs it. But an introverted person, when an introvert makes you a friend and they make the effort to show up for your stuff, they make the effort to invite you to their stuff, you're going to become close to that person.
That's great advice. So, quality over quantity,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
You've heard it here from Ray Abram. Now, Ray, if the audience wants to reach out with you and get in touch with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, this is my website, rayabram.com is the best way to reach me. And I have a calendar link. We can set up a call and we can talk more, and I can give you some one-on-one. I'm also on Instagram at ray_Abram and on Facebook as well. So just under my name. So look me up, and I'd love to help you.
Well, thank you for being here today, Ray. I know you're coming back for another episode where we're going to dive in deep to financial freedom as it relates to valuing your network, because your network is your
Net worth.
Thank you for joining us, Ray.